Welcome to Hospitality on the Rise, the podcast about the people shaping the hospitality industry and their journeys. I'm your host, Alice Cheng, founder and CEO of Culinary Agents, hospitality's go-to hiring platform. And I'm here to give you your dose of virtual mentorship. Here, we'll be sharing the stories, lessons learned, and advice from hospitality leaders who've carved out their own path to success. After all, this industry is where many get their start and go on to do incredible things. Whether you're a pro, starting out, or just love the hustle, this podcast highlights what makes hospitality extraordinary: the people. So excited to have Chef Suzanne Cupps with us today. Suzanne is the chef owner of Lola's, which is a lovely little restaurant here in New York City. Suzanne, thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm so excited to be here.
And I was particularly excited to have you on the show because I have had the privilege of tasting kind of your creations and your cooking for many years at different restaurants. And so it's kind of watched it evolved, and I've been very fortunate. So let's take a step back. How did you get into this industry?
So I started in the industry over 20 years now, which is kind of crazy. As growing up, I was not interested in food, had no aspirations to be in cooking and hospitality. Wasn't even really aware that that was a career when I was younger. And after college, I just couldn't really decide what to do, and so moved to New York back in 2002, and ended up my first year here at the Waldorf Astoria in human resources. And the team there was like so vibrant. My boss was amazing. It was a very cool, like, first New York experience to be working at the Waldorf. But I hated the paperwork side. It was so much computer, so much, shuffling paperwork. And I just knew that that wasn't really for me, even though I loved the atmosphere. So I kind of got hooked in hospitality working there. And just through like a series of friends and even one of my coworkers went to Institute of Culinary Education, which I later went to, and she was doing these recreational baking classes. And she would bring in all these like cakes and cookies that they made. And I had never heard of culinary school. It never had crossed my mind. And something like a little, seed was planted then. And just through the next couple of years, just kind of something was just kept pulling me towards cooking. And I went and checked out the school and just kind of got hooked from there on.
Okay, that's that gravitational pull of hospitality. Yeah. that you can't get, shake. So that's great. While you were at ICE, were you already thinking about, one day I'm going to own my own restaurants? Were you already doing that daydream, or were you just like, I'm doing this, I'm just going to do it, see where it goes?
No, nothing. There were no future plans. I really didn't know where it was going to take me. I didn't know who Danielle Boulud was. I didn't know who Danny Meyer was. Like, it was nothing that I had studied or really understood. But something about the type of work, I liked standing. I liked the fast pace. I liked that kind of, even in culinary school, that kind of team environment. It was just something so different from what I'd ever experienced in life. Partially because I thought I hated cooking as a kid. I never wanted to be in the kitchen. And part of it was just like the instructors getting excited that challenge of using a knife, a tool that I hadn't really worked with, and every day trying to get better. And I already had like a perfectionist type of personality. And so it was just like that work was intriguing to me. And I thought, let me just try out restaurants here. Let me just see what it was like. And then I could kind of see where I wanted to go. But there was no, even thoughts of, I want to be a chef one day. It was just, let me see what kind of job I can get and how I like it.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it's like, it is, different people have different approaches, obviously, and different people like learn differently as well. And some people have the thought and the dream very early on, and then they go try it and they're like, well, I didn't, it's not really for me. I, had a different expectation, or, they realize that, they don't like standing, right? They don't like doing these things. And so it's nice to hear you had the other, it sounds like school kind of like opened up possibilities and actually helped you kind of discover it more. Um, and so from school, what was your first like real cooking job like?
Because I had no, grasp of the industry, I didn't even know where to go. And I was in class one day and there was two women that I kind of, were friendly with and they were around my age. And they knew more about cooking than I did. And one of them said, I'm going to go to Gramercy Tavern for my externship. And I said, okay, let me check it out. So I went and I did my externship there. And that was before Mike Anthony, who I went and worked with later. That was before he was there. But I had never been in a professional kitchen. So I went every day. I stood in the basement. I peeled a lot of potatoes. I cut a lot of cabbage. I cleaned mushrooms. I just kind of absorbed it. I didn't really, it was also new. It was hard and it was tough work, but it was interesting. And, I kind of just even learned how to stand in a kitchen, how to like stand on your feet for that long, how to, you know, get faster and do things better and understand one sous chef might want something and another one might, it's all the dynamics of a kitchen. So I think it was about 3 months there. And at the end, I shook the chef's hand and I said, thank you. And I left. And I don't even know if I had thought to ask for a job, but when I graduated from culinary school a month or two later, one of a similar one of the girls in my class said, "Oh, Annisa is hiring," which was the restaurant from Anita Low. And I didn't know anything about Annisa, but I went and I did a trail there, and she hired me on the spot, and I worked for her for 6 years. So
Wow, what a
it was a very
wonderful
interesting start. Yeah.
yeah, and what a wonderful restaurant that was. And Anita is amazing, as you know. Um, and staying that long in your first like professional work experience is both to be commended, but also there must have been something that was drawing you there. What did you like about that culture, that learning environment, et cetera, that had you staying and growing?
I think it was perfect for me in that it was a very, very tiny kitchen, the smallest I've actually worked in, and my kitchen's not that big now. But the team there was fantastic. Of course, Anita was in the kitchen every day, and just she had that teaching mentality. I didn't know anything, and she showed me everything. And then my sous chef was awesome. My first sous chef, my second sous chef was great. But all the cooks, even though it was so tiny of a kitchen, they all stayed. I mean, I think my first sous chef had been there for 6 years or something. The second
Wow.
one had been there and worked his way up through the stations and was there, I think by the end, maybe 7, 8 years. I got along so well with the people that were on my left and right. And it was just like, it was fun. It was hard. You're in it together. And it's very rewarding work. And just like that idea of like coming in, doing it better the next day, like just like perfecting techniques versus like checking them off. Because again, I didn't really know what I needed to learn. And I wasn't antsy about like getting to the next level because I didn't know that I even was looking to get to the next level. And I just kind of really liked the work and liked who I worked with. So I think that's, a testament to the restaurant and just the reason why I stayed so long.
Yeah, yeah. Sounds like a great culture, work culture. And also kind of emphasizes the importance for people, especially nowadays where there's more information available. It's like, doing your homework and taking a look at like what kind of employer brand and cultures are out there. Like what kind of speaks to you, a smaller environment or a larger team or whatever. And like couple that with what you need at that given time in your career. So thanks for sharing a little down memory lane.
Yeah.
And so from there, what were you thinking about next?
Well, I stayed with Anita for so long and she knew, it was time for my next step. There wasn't really a growth there because my sous chef had been so long and he wasn't planning to leave. So, I kind of explored, but I really just I wanted to go somewhere. I wanted to try. I'd worked dinner for 6 years and I really wanted to try a lunch shift. But as I looked at the restaurants, I was, fairly competitive and not in like a ruthless way, but just I wanted to be surrounded by great cooks and I wanted to cook interesting food. And so as I looked at like lunch menus around the city, I was looking more fine dining. I felt that a lot of the places, I wasn't really excited about making sandwiches and, basic
Yeah.
food. And that's what I kept seeing. And so something just kept my eyes coming back to Gramercy Tavern, and I had met Anthony, who is the chef there, a couple years back when we had gone as a team, as an Annisa team, to lunch there. And because I had been there before, it was interesting for me to go back and try to become a line cook. So Mike and I had a couple conversations, and it took a little while, but eventually I joined their like more AM team, and really it shifted the way I thought about food. It was such a big kitchen compared to Anisa, or compared to a lot of restaurants for sure. And Mike's kind of like uh, devotion to local produce and the way he cooked and the way he spoke about food, was very interesting to me. A lot of things I hadn't thought about before. And it really kind of drew me in. I liked the techniques. I liked that they were something new for me to learn. And just kind of like went in full force, and with the idea of maybe I'll cook here for a year and, just see, maybe that's it. But let me just do one more experience. And that's kind of where my head was when I started at Gramercy.
Yeah, you make it sound so easy. I mean, I know that there is a lot of, a lot of consideration and other things, and that's great. And you spent quite some time there as well, and you got promoted from within. What do you think? Because it is such a big kitchen, and because they see so many, you know, uh, people, whether they're there for externships or they're there and they move because turnover just happens in this industry. Um, what would you say were kind of the turning points or maybe aha moments as you were progressing in the kitchen? Like, did you say, I want to be a sous chef here, or how did that come about?
Yes. I mean, I think that when I started again, there was no aspiration there. But maybe like 6 months in, I saw someone get promoted and I thought, oh, like, could I do that job? Like, do I have those skills? And I started out in the tavern, which is tough. It's, you're cooking on a live fire. I'd never worked with anything like that before. So it's very busy. There's only a couple cooks that work out there, hot. um, and it's
Everybody's staring at you now.
exactly. And it's, my first open kitchen. And once I finally got in a rhythm there, I thought, okay, like I feel like I can kind of not master, but I feel like I can do well cooking in this restaurant. And I progressed into the main dining room. Kind of, uh, Mike had put me on Garmerget, and I thought, like, I had a conversation with him of, I have been cooking for 6 years, which it's not a lot of experience because it was only one restaurant, but a lot of people around me didn't have that much experience. So I thought, why am I on Garmerget? Like, I think I'm past that. And I was so thankful to him for putting me on that station, because I feel like when I hit that was like when I was able to pick my head up, really just kind of progress in a way that I had never before. And sometimes it's like taking a step back is the thing that catapults you forward. And that attention to detail, that care, that kind of like finessing all of your work versus just rushing through it was something I'd never had an opportunity to do. And I really, really loved it. So after that, I moved pretty quickly through what they call the fish line. So fish middle, which was like the entremet station, doing a lot of the vegetables for the fish dishes. And then I became fish roast, which I really loved. And cooking fish was something by that time that was uh, pretty much my favorite thing to do. And it just like that technique is, I think, different than any other station on the line or in any kitchen is that like more delicate nature of fish. I really kind of, I don't know, fell in love with. And during that period, I maybe had been there close to a year then. And I asked Mike if I could sit down with him, because I did want to tell him, like, hey, I've never thought about this before, but I really would love to be a sous chef here. So what do I need to do? Like, do I need to work this station? Do I need to work at night? Whatever it is, I'd like to put my name in so I can so I can get there. Maybe 3-4 months later, I got the promotion to sous chef. So I was a sous chef at Gramercy for 3 years, and it was amazing. It was hard, but it was amazing.
Yeah, and I'm going to extract a couple of really great nuggets there. I didn't want to interrupt you. I mean, the first was like, well, first of all, Mike Anthony is, a amazing leader and mentor, et cetera. So it's great that you had that trust in him, and he had that trust in you to say like, hey, start here at Gramercy, et cetera. It kind of proves also that I always say like titles are titles, right?
Yeah,
Sometimes, especially in the restaurant world, like, Gramercy from one restaurant is maybe different than another restaurant versus
definitely.
another restaurant. Like that's, I think, personally, I think that's one of the challenges when people say like, oh, there's a line cook shortage. I'm like, well, line cook is such a broad term that, depending on what the individual or that business needs, it could vary, right? So, and then what, like you said, once you did that and it kind of, you learned it opened up your eyes to different things. And I feel like a leader like Mike he knew that was going to happen, right? I mean, he set you up for that in a good way.
For sure.
And then the second piece was, when you felt that that was something that you wanted, to have the conversation and to understand what needs to happen in order to get what you want, right? And I feel like those things sometimes get lost in the mix when people are, due to like just busyness, competitive nature, different leadership styles, et cetera. So I love that you shared that. Thank you. And so fast forward, so now sous chef. Fast forward, and obviously there was a new location opening up that you eventually went to take the helm of. How did that come about?
Uh,
Did you ask for that too?
no, no. Again, at that point, I was so happy with my job. It didn't matter that it was hard or I was learning every day. I liked the people I worked with. I loved that restaurant. And I had no plans to leave it or to do anything else. I really had no plans to move up. And Mike had the opportunity to open an Untitled restaurant. So the Whitney Museum that was in the Upper East Side moved down to the meatpacking, and it was a very big opening. And so they wanted to open Untitled in the museum. Mike was going to be the chef of both Gramercy and Untitled, and he spoke to me about coming with him as a chef de cuisine. And I mean, I can't quite remember my exact emotion or the exact conversation we had, but I think it's just one of those that it was so unreal and so beyond my imagination that it almost feels like it didn't happen. if you,
Yeah.
so it was a really cool experience. It was my first time that I ever had to do a tasting. I had to do a tasting for Danny Meyer because even if Mike wanted to bring me, I had to prove that I could become the chef de cuisine. And there were so many uncertain things. I was nervous because I'd only had 2 restaurant experiences, Annisa and Gramercy, and Mike and I were, going together to Untitled. So we had been cooking food like Gramercy. So what was Untitled food? How did I come up with anything different if I didn't know anything different? And so I expressed that to Danny, and he heard it, and we talked through it, and he had actually, before the opening of Untitled, he sent me to London to stage with some of his friends in the restaurants he knew there, so I could have some really like different experiences and go into the opening being inspired by different types of cuisine. So that was a really cool
Oh,
moment
wow.
for me. There were just lots of things that I had never done before, even just, understanding what it means to open a restaurant and to hire staff and to, train sous chefs and to inspire them and, all the parts that go with it.
Yeah. I love how all these pieces kind of like lead up to, you opening up your, own spot eventually, like pulling from all the different experiences. Oftentimes people say like, get experience on an opening team or learn
Well,
how to, do all these things before you just jump into, having your own place. And congrats, I believe you were also the first female executive chef. You eventually got promoted to executive chef under Union Square Hospitality Group at the time.
thanks.
So,
Yeah.
so fast forward, obviously we had that little pesky thing called the pandemic that hit, in between. But even before that, you had moved to a new concept, a different restaurant within kind of the orbit, I would say, of Danny Meyer, I guess.
Sure. Yeah.
Um,
Mostly.
how was opening that location different from, your other opening experience and some of the other things that you did?
Yeah. So I was at Untitled for 4 years, and I wanted to kind of keep moving forward. And I had a good conversation with the folks that were running Dig In. So it was a fast casual concept. They were very aligned with like the idea of produce and sourcing vegetables. They had their own farm upstate. It was a very cool, um, kind of a dream that they were having to open their first fine dining or full service restaurant. And one of my very good friends, Katie Bell, who worked in a lot of really top restaurants here in New York, and I had worked with her at Untitled, was their opening director. And she kind of introduced me to them and the idea of this little restaurant in the West Village called 232 Bleecker. And so I did open that as the chef in December of 2019. And it was just such a romantic little restaurant on the corner of Bleecker and Carmine in the West Village with a wood burning hearth and just a really talented team of folks front and back and cooking vegetable forward dishes. I was able to kind of take a step forward, I think, from my cooking and my cuisine at Untitled and even just try out something a little new. Was so proud of it, and that opening was also hard in a very different way. But the unfortunate thing, like a lot of people experience, we were 3 months to the day when COVID hit, so we were thankfully kept open through most of it. But we did all the pivots, we did all the delivery, outdoor dining, wine shop, you name it. We did the things that everybody did to survive at that time, and I do feel like. Because I was working garde again, there was two of us on the line most days. Because I was doing all that, it really like allowed me to get the confidence of like, okay, I'm no longer the chef. I'm helping run the business. We're pivoting every day depending on what's happening. And it just really gave me that confidence to say like, okay, I have never dreamed of my own restaurant, but I have more, I have more experience. I have, you know, I've gone through so many things that aren't just chef anymore. That maybe this is the time for me to step out on my own.
I love that. And I think, if we can extract any positive, moments out of COVID, it is that, a lot of businesses and individuals were forced to either learn new skills or, figure things out differently. And that those skills, were beneficial in future things. So, kind of, what is it, like forced change or forced
Yeah.
learning? So at that, so now you're like, okay, I think it's time to do my own thing. Did you start like conceptualizing and like already starting to look at spaces and stuff?
I really had no idea how to even go about it. And I think, of course, the number one scariest thing is how do you even afford it? Like, how do you? And thankfully, because I had worked in the same restaurants for a long time, I really got to know the guests. I got to know people. We had open kitchen, not just at Gramercy, but Untitled and then Bleecker. And I got to know a lot of the guests. And a lot of people said when I was leaving, 232, and I was leaving Untitled, hey, if you ever think of something, let me know. And so it was really through like the support of a lot of our former regulars, and even not even just financial support, but just like introducing me to someone to have a conversation, someone who had expertise in an area that I had never, I had no idea what I was doing. It was only because of all of the generosity of the people around me. Was I even able to even start the process? But it was hard. It was very unfamiliar, and it was nice to be doing something new and be challenged in a different way, not just in the kitchen. But it took at least 2 years kind of to not even get the doors open, but to, have the restaurant even started construction.
Wow. And you just recently had your 2-year anniversary as well,
Yes.
right? Congratulations
Yeah. Just
on
that
Lola's.
began this month or 2 years.
Yeah. Can you remember, I'm sure there's a whole list of them. Can you remember like one thing that was really like wow, I didn't expect this. This is pretty hard when you opened your doors or leading up to it?
Uh, it was I don't want to just be generic about it, but it was kind of every moment. Friends of mine said, you just got to push through it, kind of every moment of like finding the space took almost 2 years, just even not even like starting the lease process, but just like even finding a space to possibly move forward with. The lease was just so challenging, and at any moment it felt like it might fall apart. So, my attorney was amazing and gave me great advice, but it kind of like felt like at every turn something might not go right. They might pull out, they might go with someone else. So that I feel like was probably one of the biggest challenges, was that like just initial getting the space. And a lot of people didn't really want to sign on as investors or give money until they really saw you were serious with, they didn't want their money just sitting in an account waiting for space to come about. So it was a really nerve wracking, I think, kind of going for it, signing a lease without having funds to kind of continue the project. And so it was just every moment me asking a lot of favors, like, can you introduce me to someone? Do you know anybody that does this X? And I think just people really like stood up for me and kind of came in to help at moments. But there's been lots of challenges, but just because it was so new and so foreign, I think that lease process was the hardest.
Yeah. Yeah. I always take a breath before I ask that question because I'm like, I know. I mean, even that there's probably all sorts of things. But that's also a testament to, well, two things. One is, the networking, the relationships, the way you took care of your guests and people over the years. I bet a lot of people were very happy and like honored to help you out as well and continue to support you. But then also ask for help, right? I think a lot
Yep.
of people, especially in hospitality, it's like everyone gives, and like it's kind of like nobody. Sometimes people don't ask or don't know what to ask for, and don't even like start that process. So I think that's also. I always believe that people genuinely want to help, but the easier you make it for them to help
Well,
you, I think that is like the most efficient part of the show. Um, and congrats. Well, what's next for you?
oh, so I'm not right now. I'm at home, but in general, I'm pretty much in the kitchen all the time. Uh, we've just expanded to the most services we've ever had. So we're now 7 nights a week, and we're doing 4 lunches. So,
Amazing.
you know, things have things have evolved, and we're so lucky that not just to bring our vision to life, but like to understand, what does the neighborhood want? We're in a neighborhood with a lot of great hotels. What do the hotel guests, what are they looking for? And um, you know, I think my identity around food and who I am as a chef has really like narrowed in. And I think the most exciting thing for me is that I feel like I'm cooking different food than I ever have. I feel like that creativity, it doesn't feel stagnant. It almost feels like I'm being inspired and creating food that I had never done in ways I had never done before. And I think that that's an exciting part because, when you're running a restaurant, there's so many other factors. The business side is really challenging. Even just like the operations of pushing service through is hard. And to feel like I continue to have ideas that I'm excited about, and just kind of honing in on our concept is a great place. So there's not really anything past Lola's right now. It's really just kind of continuing to keep our business, healthy, and our guests excited to continue to return. And a big thing for me is like to do what done to me, which is like mentoring and teaching. And so it is a lot of that. It's a lot of, I'm getting older and the cooks are definitely getting younger. So it's that constant teaching and not hand holding, but kind of showing and guiding and working alongside the team, which is kind of my focus right now, to like grow our team and see where we end up next.
Yeah, I love that. And for those of you who haven't had a chance to enjoy at Lola's, make it out there. It's got a beautiful bar in the front, and then it opens up, and then there's seating all around. The food is delicious. I remember there were several standout dishes, but obviously you are very skilled with vegetables. And when I had the cabbage side dish, it like took me back to like childhood memories in some interesting way. But it's so wonderful. And having, I mentioned earlier, having had your cooking at different places, and Lola's, obviously it's yours, but it's definitely different.
Yeah.
And you can tell, and people that, and when we talk about like mentorship and leadership and who to work for, I think it's important to share these timelines because, if somebody is considering working, for example, with you, they're also getting kind of a consolidated version of like different experiences that you had, and then combined with your perspective and your own personal touch, which is really special. So congrats to you, and I love that. And you do absolutely have that reputation in the industry as well as a teacher, a mentor, patient, leader. So kudos, because that's also not it's hard, especially with dealing with all the pressures and aside from just service, right?
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing. That is really great to get kind of some of the additional details behind the career path, other than just seeing where you've been over the years. But on that note, we're going to go to quickfire. What advice would you tell your younger self?
Not go too fast. I think that the periods of my life where I just kind of was always, was pushing forward, I missed some of the moments. And I think that, if I could go back to some of those line cooking days or some of those moments as sous chef, I would, because I think that, cooking is all about being in the moment, not being too antsy about what's next, and just really enjoying the craft that we get to do every day.
What's your advice for someone struggling in the industry?
It's not for everyone. But if you feel passionate about like the subject matter, which could be the cuisine, which could be the type of work, whatever it is that draws you into the industry, you really just have to have patience, because what I tell my cooks is that, when they start a new station and they're not doing well and they're not excelling yet, is like, if you already got it and you already, were mastering everything the first day, the first week, cooking everybody would do it, or there would be no use for it. It's like, cooking is one of those crafts that you have to do it over and over and over again. And if you don't have that passion, you don't love it, it might just not be for you. Don't force it if it doesn't feel like it's, something you want to really dig in and spend the time to excel at.
What's your advice for fellow hospitality leaders?
Being in it with the team is really important, working side by side with those who are struggling, who are not getting it, those who need inspiration. It's very hard to just constantly correct verbally, or to, have sit downs and for people not to not experience, how you do things. And so I think there's something, I know not every chef is able to like spend all their time in the kitchen, but I do think that leading by example, and actually in those hard moments when you're short staffed or when you've got a really difficult week, getting in there with them, whether it's like cleaning the line at the end of the night or, putting away produce or just taking something off their plate, really just goes a long way for your team.
On that note, thank you so much, Susie, for sharing your timeline and learnings and advice. We can't wait to see what's next.
Thanks, Alex.
Remember, success looks different for everyone in hospitality. No two paths are the same. If you have a leader or a topic you want to hear about, email media@culinaryaagents.com. Hospitality on the Rise is brought to you by Culinary Agents, connecting top talent with employers since 2012. Whether you're hiring or looking for your next opportunity, join us at culinaryaagents.com. For more inspiration, subscribe to Hospitality on the Rise and visit hospitalitycareerpaths.com, a free platform by Culinary Agents. Thanks for tuning in. Remember to like, follow, and subscribe. And if you love this episode, share it with someone who could use a little inspiration.